We are always being formed by something. The question is whether we are paying attention to what is forming us and whether we are responding to God intentionally. I think God has been drawing my attention to two things lately: formation and community. And honestly, I don't know what he's trying to show me in totality just yet. But I know the subject keeps coming back. This past week alone, I preached from Ephesians 4 1 through 6 twice, and I taught from the same passage twice. So, for about 4 days out of 1 week, I was talking about unity, what biblical unity is, how believers are supposed to live together, and how we are stewards of the unity that God has already created rather than us being creators of that unity ourselves. Then I look at the last few months, and Genesis 2:18 has continued to stay on my mind. It is not good for man to be alone. That verse has been with me since before I entered seminary. So I don't know exactly where all of this is going yet, but I think God is teaching me something about spiritual formation, community formation, and what it means to build authentic communities of grace. And maybe the first lesson is simply this: none of us is formed alone. I've only started using the language of spiritual formation seriously within the last few months. I heard the term before, I knew it existed, but I had never explored it deeply. So now I am in seminary taking a spiritual formation class, reading about the subject, and I'm beginning to recognize that formation is not just another ministry concept. It is foundational. Growth comes out of formation. Learning comes out of formation. Discipleship comes out of formation. The way I serve as a chaplain, preach as a pastor, lead other ministers, love my wife, and raise my children is influenced by what has formed me and what is continuing to form me. So I'm beginning to see spiritual formation as a first order concern. Chaplaincy, teaching, preaching, leadership, and even disciple making are secondary in the sense that the way I carry out those responsibilities flows from the kind of person I am becoming. Formation undergirds all of it. The image for me that comes to mind is a military unit or a sports team. Before a person becomes a leader within that unit, that person has to be formed. A cadet is trained before becoming an officer. A player on a team develops before becoming a team captain. Sometimes the process strips you down to the basics. You have to unlearn some things. You have to develop new habits. You have to be corrected. You have to recognize where your instincts are wrong and where your responses need to mature. Then, over time, the things that have been placed in your life begin shaping you into someone who can carry greater responsibility. Now, that don't happen all at once. And it doesn't look exactly the same for everybody. God uses different experiences, relationships, responsibilities, struggles, and seasons to form different people. For me, right now, the environments doing most of the forming are seminary, chaplaincy, preaching and ministry, and of course, marriage and fatherhood. I can see the evidence of that formation when I compare how I used to parent now or then as to how I parent maybe let's say like a year ago or so. A year ago, I probably would have had less patience with my children. I might have been too quick to discipline them. I may not have always disciplined them correctly because the response could have come out of frustration or out of an attempt to prevent future frustration rather than using gentleness or wisdom or care. Now, I can see some change now. I'm not saying I have arrived, by no means, but I can recognize that I am becoming more patient and more gentle. I can also see it in my marriage. Having hard conversations, communicating boundaries, and addressing difficult things with my wife would have been way harder for me a year ago. And even when I tried, I probably would not have approached those conversations with the right amount of grace. Not at least the amount of grace that I'm learning to have. That's formation. It's not merely learning more information, but it is becoming a different kind of person due to formation. What's forming me? One of the things I am becoming more conscious of is the fact that we are all being formed all the time. Whether we choose it or not, something is shaping us. Our habits, they form us. Our entertainment choices form us. Our relationships form us. Our sufferings, they form us. Our communities do as well. What we repeatedly place before our eyes and our ears, they eventually reach our minds and our hearts. So formation is something that God does, but I also believe it is something to which we respond. God is going to use life to form us. That's just the long and short of it. But when we say yes to God, we begin participating intentionally in what He is doing. We begin paying attention. We start discerning what we are allowing to shape us. We stop being passive about what enters our eyes, our ears, our minds, and our hearts. And I think this is where the difference between being reactive and being responsive becomes important. You see, a reaction, it's immediate. It can come straight out of frustration, fear, anger, or whatever emotion arrives first. A response requires something different. You see, a response requires time. It requires thought. It requires mindfulness and intentionality. It requires care. I would rather be a responsive person than a reactive person because I believe our lives are responses to God. I want to respond well to what God is doing for me, to me, in me, and through me. And spiritual formation is helping me become more aware of that response. Now, one of the hardest ways God has been forming me in this season is through suffering. In a previous season, much of my suffering was personal. I had financial struggles. I couldn't find the kind of work I needed to sustain and take care of my family. I was trying to remain faithful to God because I believed that He had called me to do the things that I were doing. And even in that calling, when it wasn't paying the bills or anything like that, I wanted to stick to it, but it was a struggle. Now, some of the suffering looks a little different. I am trying to love and support my mother as she deals with cancer. I have family members who are going through personal struggles. My aunts are also dealing with some health issues. And it's difficult to watch the women who helped raise me suffer. As a chaplain, I sit with other people who in their suffering. But it's different when suffering enters your own family. It is different when the people hurting are the people who nurtured you, who cared for you, who raised you. And one of the hardest parts is accepting that I cannot make their suffering disappear. But I can pray. I can call. I can encourage them. I can love them. I can be present. But I cannot fix everything. And I think part of what God has been teaching me is how to suffer well and how to stay with other people while they suffer, even while I am carrying suffering of my own. I would not have signed up for that lesson. Nobody wants to learn how to suffer. But life is filled with suffering. At the same time, life is also beautiful. There are joyful and beautiful moments that exist right alongside that pain. And sometimes beauty and suffering are sitting just right there next to each other. And that's strange, but it's real. And through all of it, guess what? God has been gracious. He has been kind. He has not left me alone in my suffering. Now, that doesn't remove the pain by any means, but his presence within it is still a blessing. Now, this conversation isn't only for pastors or for chaplains or ministry leaders or seminarians. Formation is for every believer. If you identify as a follower of Jesus, as a Christian, or even as an apprentice of Jesus, then it matters how you are being formed. It matters who is forming you. It matters what is shaping your imagination, desires, habits, decisions, and responses. And I think one of the misunderstandings that we sometimes have is treating spiritual formation and discipleship as though they are interchangeable. While they are related, I don't think they are identical. The way we disciple others or allow others to disciple us flows out of our formation. So if the person forming us has not paid attention to their own formation, then what are they reproducing in us? If we have not considered what is forming us, how can we discern who should guide us? Formation helps development and it helps discernment. It affects the kind of disciple we become and the kind of disciple maker we become. Formation affects how we become husbands, wives, parents, friends, leaders, teachers, servants, and neighbors. So the question is not whether we are being formed. The question is, what are we being formed into and by whom? One of the small practices I'm working on is becoming better at being bored. I am trying to become better at doing difficult things and become better at refocusing. And now part of that means not reaching for my phone every time my mind wants like another dopamine hit. It also means not always turning on noise simply because the silence feels a little uncomfortable. Sometimes I need to sit in that silence. Sometimes I need to let my mind settle. Sometimes I need to reflect, pray, listen, or just be present. Even now, there's times when I'm commuting and I got the radio turned off, I got my windows down, and the sun just beaming right on through. And I allow my mind to slow down. I allow myself to notice what I'm thinking about. I think about who might need prayer. I try to make room to hear from the Lord because this season feels important. It feels foundational. The things God is forming in me now may shape the kind of disciple, pastor, chaplain, husband, father, and leader I might become later. And those things will not only affect me, they will affect the people I'm called to serve. So, this week, start with the quiet moments. You probably have pockets of silence somewhere in your day. Maybe it's during your commute. Maybe it's before everyone wakes up. Maybe it's after the kids go to bed. Maybe it's during a walk. Instead of immediately filling that empty or that quiet space with noise, allow yourself to sit in it. And then ask, what has been shaping me lately? What have I been allowing into my heart and my mind? Where might God be trying to get my attention? How am I responding to what God is doing in my life? What kind of person am I becoming? And listen, if you're in a difficult season, remember this. Your difficult season is not wasted. God can use your struggle, your frustration, your loss, and suffering to form you into the person He desires you to become for His glory. And while He is forming you, He has not abandoned you. He is still present with you inside the process. We are always being formed by something. The wisdom begins when we start paying attention to what is forming us and intentionally respond to God. Now, I'm still learning what formation means and how God may be using community, seminary, suffering, ministry, and family to form me. But I know this is something I want to continue to pay attention to. Well, that's my reflection. Now, if this reflection encouraged you, do consider liking the video and subscribing so you can continue to follow along the journey. But just liking this video alone helps this reflection get in front of someone who actually may need to hear it. So it means a lot. And remember, you are not on this path alone. Until next time, stay present.